We often live our lives as though we are running from something. Have you ever felt that way? Like there's a shadow of yourself you're desperately trying to avoid? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's uncertainty, or maybe it's the terrifying idea that you could become something far greater than you are now. What if I told you that most of us are not afraid of failure, but of success? Not of being lost, but of being found. Not of being nothing, but of becoming everything we were meant to be. But here's the question: are you afraid to become who you are? I want to take you on a journey, a profound exploration of this question. By the end of this video, you won't just understand yourself better, you'll see your life in a way you never have before. You'll realize that the person you've been avoiding might just be the person you were destined to become. Let's begin. When you were a child, you probably had dreams so big they felt almost absurd. You wanted to be an astronaut, or a rock star, or maybe even a superhero. You didn't care about how impossible it seemed. Your imagination wasn't limited by fear, by failure, or by the judgment of others. The world felt infinite, didn't it? But somewhere along the way, you stopped dreaming. Or maybe you didn't stop dreaming, you just started doubting. Why? Why do we doubt ourselves so much? Why do we convince ourselves that we are not enough? The truth is, there's something incredibly safe about staying small. When you stay small, you avoid risk. You avoid rejection. You avoid the pain of trying and failing. But here's the paradox: by staying small, you also avoid the joy of becoming. You avoid the thrill of transformation. You avoid the person you were meant to be. So let me ask you this: what would your life look like if you stopped running? And when I say running, I'm not talking about running from others. I'm talking about running from yourself, your truest, most authentic self. The version of you that isn't defined by fear, or insecurity, or self-doubt. The version of you that's raw, unapologetic, and alive.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Now let's get philosophical for a moment. One of the greatest minds in history, Friedrich Nietzsche, said, "Become who you are at first glance." This might sound simple, even obvious, but it's not. It's one of the most difficult challenges you will ever face. Because to become who you are, you first have to confront who you've been pretending to be. Who are you pretending to be right now? Think about it. Are you pretending to be someone who's okay with mediocrity? Someone who's content with living a life that doesn't excite them? Someone who's afraid to take risks, to fail, to be vulnerable? If so, ask yourself who taught you to be this way. Because here's the thing: we're not born afraid. Fear is something we learn. Maybe it was a parent who told you to be realistic. Maybe it was a teacher who said you weren't good enough. Maybe it was society whispering in your ear that you should stay in your lane, play it safe, keep your head down. But here's the truth they don't tell you: the people who change the world, the people who live lives of meaning and purpose, are the ones who dare to become who they are. They're the ones who refuse to settle. The ones who look fear in the face and say, "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of staying the same." Let me tell you a story. There was a man who lived his entire life in a small village. Every day he would sit outside his home, staring at the mountains in the distance. He would dream of climbing them, of seeing what was on the other side. But he never did. He was too afraid. He told himself it was better to stay where it was safe, where he knew what to expect. Years passed, decades, and one day, as he lay on his deathbed, he realized something. It wasn't the mountains he was afraid of. It was himself. He was afraid of the man he would have to become to climb them. The man who would have to face his fears, leave his comfort zone, and risk everything for the chance to truly live. So let me ask you, what are the mountains in your life? And what's stopping you from climbing them? Here's the thing about fear, it's not going anywhere. No matter how much you grow, no matter how much you achieve, fear will always be there. But the question is not whether you can eliminate fear. The question is whether you can move forward in spite of it. Think about it. What's the worst thing that could happen if you fail? You fall down. You get back up. You try again. But what's the worst thing that could happen if you never try? You stay stuck. You stay small. You live your entire life wondering what could have been. And that, my friend, is the ultimate tragedy. So how do you do it? How do you stop running from yourself and start becoming who you are? The first step is to get honest, brutally honest. Look at your life right now. Are you living in a way that aligns with your deepest values, your truest desires? Or are you living in fear? If you're not sure, here's a simple test. Imagine yourself at the end of your life, looking back. Would you be proud of the choices you're making today? Would you be proud of the risks you took, the dreams you chased, the person you became? Or would you feel regret? Regret is a powerful thing. In fact, research shows that the biggest regret people have at the end of their lives is not what they did, but what they didn't do. The chances they didn't take, the dreams they didn't pursue, the person they didn't become. Now, let's get practical. If you want to become who you are, you have to start small. You don't need to climb the entire mountain today. You just need to take the first step. What does that look like for you? Maybe it's having an honest conversation with yourself about what you really want. Maybe it's setting a goal that scares you a little or a lot. Maybe it's simply deciding that you're no longer going to settle for anything less than the life you deserve. Whatever it is, take that step. And when fear shows up, and it will remember this fear is not a stop sign, it's a compass. It points you toward the places where you have the most room to grow. So the next time you feel afraid, don't run away. Lean in. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to teach me? And who could I become if I stopped letting it hold me back? Here's the final thing I want you to remember. Becoming who you are is not a destination. It's a journey. It's not about reaching some perfect version of yourself. It's about embracing the process of growth, of transformation, of becoming. And yes, it's scary. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But it's also the most beautiful, fulfilling thing you will ever do. Because at the end of the day, there is no greater achievement than becoming the person you were always meant to be. So I'll ask you one last time, are you afraid to become who you are? The fear of becoming who you are is not just about the fear of failure, but often the fear of freedom. Freedom sounds like such a beautiful concept, doesn't it? But in reality, freedom is heavy. It means responsibility. It means making choices. It means owning your life fully, with no one else to blame if things go wrong. And that terrifies us. Most of us would rather stay in the comfort of a cage than risk the uncertainty of an open field. Think about it. How often do you choose what's easy over what's meaningful? How often do you stick to routines, habits, or relationships that feel safe, even though deep down you know they're holding you back? Comfort is seductive. It whispers to you, telling you that you've done enough, that change is too risky, that where you are now is good enough. But is it, or is it just safe enough? Safe enough to avoid the sting of failure. Safe enough to avoid the effort of growth. Safe enough to keep you from realizing how much more you're capable of. And here's the paradox: the longer you stay in the comfort zone, the smaller it becomes. What used to feel cozy starts to feel suffocating. The job you once settled for starts to drain you. The relationship you stayed in out of habit starts to weigh on you. The life you thought was good enough starts to feel like a trap. Why? Because deep down you know you're meant for more. There's a part of you that's screaming for change, for challenge, for something real. But instead of listening to it, you drown it out. You scroll through your phone. You binge watch another show. You find distractions to keep you from facing the truth that the life you're living might not be the life you want. And that realization hurts. It's uncomfortable. But discomfort is the price of freedom. You might be thinking, why can't I just stay comfortable? Why can't I just enjoy the life I have? The answer is simple, because growth is a fundamental part of being human. When you stop growing, you start dying, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Have you ever noticed how alive you feel when you're learning something new or achieving something you never thought you could? That's because growth gives your life meaning. And meaning is what we're all searching for, whether we realize it or not. But meaning doesn't come from comfort. It comes from struggle, from effort, from pushing yourself to do the things that scare you, the things that challenge you, the things that force you to evolve. Fear, ironically, is often the clearest signal of what you need to do. If something scares you, it's probably because it matters. It's because that thing has the power to change you, to stretch you, to make you more than you were before. But instead of leaning into fear, most of us run from it. We convince ourselves that fear is a stop sign when really it's a green light. Think about the times in your life when you felt truly proud of yourself. Were they moments when everything was easy, or were they moments when you overcame something hard? The truth is, the things we're most afraid of are often the things that will bring us the most joy, the most fulfillment, the most meaning. But we'll never know unless we're willing to face them. So why don't we? Why do we let fear have so much power over us? It's because fear is sneaky. It doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like procrastination. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism. Sometimes it looks like excuses. I'm too busy, I'm not ready, I'll do it later. But deep down, you know those are just lies you tell yourself to avoid doing the hard thing. And here's the hard truth: there is no perfect time. There is no moment when you'll feel 100% ready. If you're waiting for certainty, you'll be waiting forever. The only way to overcome fear is to act in spite of it, to take the leap before you're ready, to trust that you'll figure it out along the way. And yes, you might fail. In fact, you probably will. But failure isn't the end, it's the beginning. Every failure teaches you something. Every failure gets you closer to success. But you'll never experience that if you're too afraid to try. Think about all the people who have achieved great things. Do you think they were fearless? Of course not. They were terrified. But they didn't let that stop them. They felt the fear and did it anyway. And that's what separates them from everyone else. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's courage. The courage to step into the unknown. The courage to risk everything for the chance to become something more. You might be wondering, what if I try and I'm still not good enough? What if I fail and it proves that I'm not capable? But here's the thing: your worth isn't determined by your success or failure. It's determined by your willingness to try, by your willingness to grow, by your willingness to become who you are, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when it feels impossible. Because the truth is, you already are enough. You don't need anyone else's approval. You don't need anyone else's permission. You just need to believe in yourself enough to take the first step. And that's what freedom really is. It's not about having everything figured out. It's not about being fearless or perfect or successful. It's about owning your life. It's about choosing growth over comfort, courage over fear, meaning over mediocrity. It's about becoming the person you were always meant to be, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when it feels impossible. Because the alternative is staying stuck, staying small, staying in a life that doesn't excite you. And that, to me, is far scarier than failure. So the question isn't, what if I fail? The question is, what if I never try? What if you spend your entire life running from the person you could have been? What if you get to the end and realize you never really lived? That's the real fear. That's the fear that should keep you up at night. Because the only thing worse than failing is regret. And the only way to avoid regret is to take the risk, to face the fear, to stop running from yourself and start becoming who you are. And yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's also going to be worth it. Because there is nothing more fulfilling, more meaningful, more alive than becoming the person you were always meant to be. So let me ask you again, not as a challenge, but as a reminder, are you afraid to become who you are? Or are you ready to stop living small, stop living safe, and start living fully? The cost of staying the same is far greater than the price of change. We don't always see it because staying the same feels easier. It feels safer, but it's not. Over time, the weight of staying in one place, refusing to grow, and ignoring the truth of who you are slowly crushes you. It happens so gradually that you don't notice it first. You wake up one day and realize that you've built a life around avoiding pain, not seeking joy. You've made choices that protect you, not challenge you. And in that protection, in that so-called safety, you've lost something far more valuable than comfort. You've lost your sense of aliveness. Life is designed to be in motion. You are designed to evolve. Yet so many of us cling to routines, habits, and versions of ourselves that no longer fit. It's like wearing shoes you've outgrown. Sure, they might still function, but they'll hurt you with every step. The longer you wear them, the more damage they'll cause. Change is the same way. The longer you resist it, the more it hurts. The pain of staying the same might be quieter than the fear of change, but make no mistake, it's there. And over time, it grows louder. Stagnation is not peace. It's not freedom. It's a slow erosion of everything you're capable of being. The real problem is that staying the same feels deceptively cheap. It feels like you're saving yourself from the risk of failure, the effort of growth, the uncertainty of what comes next. But what you're actually doing is paying the highest price of all. You're giving up your potential. You're giving up the chance to create a life that excites you, that challenges you, that makes you proud. And for what? For the illusion of safety, for the temporary comfort of avoiding discomfort. That's not a bargain, it's a robbery. It's stealing from your future self. The self who could have looked back and said, I did it. I lived fully. I became who I was meant to be instead. That future self looks back and wonders, what if? That's the cost of staying the same. It's not just missing out on achievements or milestones, it's missing out on the person you could have become. It's missing out on a life that feels truly alive, instead of just tolerable. But here's the thing, change isn't as expensive as we think. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it requires effort. But the rewards far outweigh the risks. The moment you stop fighting against change, the moment you start leaning into who you're meant to be, everything shifts. You begin to see that the fear of change was never about the change itself. It was about leaving behind the identity you've built around staying small. It's about letting go of the excuses, the stories, the lies you've told yourself to justify why you're not where you want to be. And that process is painful, but it's also liberating. Because once you let go of who you were, you make space for who you can become. And that version of you, the one who's brave enough to change, is the version who's capable of living a life that feels meaningful, exciting, and real. The irony is, change isn't something you can avoid forever. Life will force it on you whether you like it or not. The question isn't whether you'll change, it's whether you'll choose to do it willingly or wait until circumstances leave you with no other option. When you resist change, life has a way of pushing back. The job you tolerate eventually becomes unbearable. The relationship you stay in out of fear eventually falls apart. The version of yourself you cling to eventually feels hollow. Life has a way of breaking us open when we refuse to do it ourselves. But when you choose change, when you decide to step into the discomfort willingly, you take back control. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your own life. And that's what real power looks like, not controlling everything around you, but controlling your response to it. Choosing growth over stagnation. Choosing courage over fear. Choosing to become who you are, even when it's hard, even when it's hard, even when it's messy, even when you're not sure how it will all turn out. People often say they're afraid of change because they don't know what's on the other side. But let's be honest, you already know what's on the other side of staying the same. You've been living it. And if you're watching this, if you're still here listening, it's because you know that staying the same isn't enough for you anymore. You know you're capable of more. You know there's a part of you that's tired of playing small, tired of settling, tired of living a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. That's the part of you that's ready to change. That's the part of you that's already started. Because the truth is, the moment you decide that staying the same is no longer an option, you've already begun the process of becoming. Change doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, quiet moments like this one. Moments when you realize that fear isn't a good enough reason to hold yourself back anymore. Moments when you decide that the pain of staying the same is greater than the fear of moving forward. There's no map for this, no step-by-step guide that guarantees success. But that's the beauty of it. Becoming who you are isn't about following a path that someone else has laid out for you. It's about creating your own. It's about trusting yourself enough to take the first step, even when you don't know where it will lead. And yes, you might get lost along the way. Yes, you might stumble, you might fall, you might fail. But every step you take, every risk you embrace, every fear you face brings you closer to the person you're meant to be. And that person, the one who's on the other side of fear, is worth it. That person is worth everything. Because that person isn't just surviving, they're living. They're thriving. They're free. The question isn't whether you'll face challenges or setbacks or doubts. You will. The question is whether you'll let those things stop you. Will you let fear dictate your life, or will you take the risk of becoming something more? Will you stay in the comfort of the cage, or will you step into the uncertainty of freedom? Because freedom isn't given, it's earned. It's earned through courage, through effort, through the willingness to face the fear of the unknown and step into it anyway. And when you choose freedom over fear, everything changes. You begin to see that the life you've been waiting for isn't something out there, it's something you create. It's something you become. And that's the most empowering realization of all, that you have the power to shape your life, to shape yourself, to become the person you've always known you could be. So the real question is, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Every second you hesitate, every excuse you make, every time you let fear win, you're delaying the life you're meant to live. And the truth is, time doesn't wait for you. Life keeps moving, whether you're ready or not. The longer you stand still, the further away you drift from the person you're capable of becoming. People often live as if they have all the time in the world, as if there will be some perfect moment in the future when everything will align, when they'll feel ready, when the fear will magically disappear. But that moment never comes. Waiting for it is just another way of avoiding the truth. There is no perfect time. There is only now. The longer you wait, the more momentum you lose, and the harder it becomes to break free from the patterns that are holding you back. Change doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you make a choice. A choice to stop waiting, to stop hesitating, to stop making fear an excuse to stay small. The life you want isn't going to fall into your lap. Nobody is going to hand it to you. Nobody is going to come and save you. The world doesn't owe you anything. And that's not a bad thing, that's a gift. Because it means you don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for someone to tell you it's your time. It's always your time, as long as you're willing to claim it. But claiming it means taking responsibility. It means accepting that where you are right now, whether it's where you want to be or not, is the result of the choices you've made so far. And that can be hard to face. It's easier to blame circumstances, other people, bad luck, or anything else that lets you off the hook. But as long as you do that, you're giving away your power. You're saying, I can't change because it's not up to me. That's a lie. It's always up to you. Maybe you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. You can always control the choices you make moving forward. The real challenge isn't the outside world. It's not the obstacles in your way, the people who doubt you, or the circumstances that feel unfair. The real challenge is you. It's the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. Most of us live our lives trapped by stories we didn't even write. Stories we picked up from our parents, our teachers, our culture, our failures. Stories that say, you're not smart enough, you're not strong enough, you're not strong enough, you're not good enough. But here's the thing, those stories aren't real. They're just thoughts, patterns, beliefs you've carried for so long that they feel like the truth. They're not. And the moment you realize that, the moment you decide to stop living by those stories, everything changes. You don't have to be the person you were yesterday. You don't have to be the person other people expect you to be. You don't have to be the person fear tells you to be. You get to decide who you are. You get to write a new story. But rewriting your story takes courage. It takes effort. It takes a willingness to step into the unknown and trust that you'll figure it out along the way. And yes, it's going to be messy. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail. You're going to feel like giving up. But those moments are where growth happens. Those moments are where you find out what you're really made of. Because growth isn't clean or comfortable or easy. It's raw. It's uncomfortable. It's hard. But it's also worth it. Because every time you push through the discomfort, every time you choose growth over fear, you get stronger. You get closer to the person you want to be. You prove to yourself that you're capable of more than you thought. And that's how confidence is built, not by waiting until you feel ready, but by doing the hard thing and realizing you can. People often talk about wanting to feel confident before they take action, but they've got it backwards. Confidence doesn't come first. Action does. Confidence is the result of doing the thing you're afraid of proving to yourself that you're stronger than your fear. The more you act, the more confident you become. It's that simple. But most people never get there because they're waiting for the confidence to show up first. They stay stuck, not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling to take the first step without a guarantee. They want certainty. They want to know it will all work out before they even begin. But that's not how life works. There are no guarantees. There's only the choice to try or not to try. And the people who achieve great things aren't the ones who have all the answers, they're the ones who are willing to take the risk, even when they don't. The truth is, you're never going to feel ready. You're never going to have all the answers. You're always going to feel some level of fear, some level of doubt. But that doesn't mean you're not capable. It doesn't mean you're not worthy. It just means you're human. And being human means you have a choice. You can let fear control you, or you can take control of your fear. You can let the doubt stop you, or you can move forward in spite of it. You can stay where you are, or you can take the risk of becoming something more. And that's what this is all about, not achieving some perfect version of yourself, but becoming the truest version of yourself. The version who isn't held back by fear or doubt or the stories other people have told you. The version who is willing to take the risk, to face the fear, to do the hard thing, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. The life you want, the person you want to be, the freedom you crave, it's all on the other side of fear. And the only way to get there is to go through it. Not around it, not over it, through it. That's what courage is. It's not the absence of fear, it's moving forward in spite of it. It's choosing growth over comfort, meaning over mediocrity, freedom over fear. And when you do that, when you stop letting fear dictate your life, you realize something incredible, that the person you've always wanted to be has been inside you all along. They were just waiting for you to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop making excuses. They were waiting for you to choose them. So the question isn't whether you can become who you are. You already can. The question is whether you will. What's stopping you? And more importantly, when will you decide that it's no longer enough to stay the same?